let me start the 30% rule, your business. First off, I think I know the name, and I think it's a very cool name. Give me the kind of the short answer for the where the name came from or what that means.
So the 30% rule is, I've been in the industry for 20 years. I've helped open 25 restaurants. I've worked for numerous restaurants. I've helped grow numerous restaurants. And the biggest thing I've seen is that the restaurant owners a lot of times focus on the wrong things. So my whole philosophy is focus on the 30% of the things that matter. Obviously, you have to have consistent food and good food, but you also have to have training, systems, good leadership, and culture for your front of the house staff, who are the face and representation and voice of your brand. And so that's the 30% you need to focus on to really grow your brand the right way.
Okay, deadly. So if let's just to I suppose to really understand the business, let's just say I have a small sandwich shop in Ireland, and I come to you and I say, look, Preston, I need help, man. I'm struggling. How does that relationship? What can you do for me, and how does that kind of relationship? How will that work? How will that look? What you provide me?
Yeah, so I mean, it would be a little bit different. I usually help restaurants that are doing well and they want to grow and scale even more. They want to get bigger. They want to get better. And so, but let's say, yeah, your restaurant that comes to me and says, "Hey, I don't feel like I'm reaching my full potential here. I feel like I'm missing a really big piece of the puzzle and I can't figure out what it is." So first of all, I would say that, we'll do an audit of your training, which I can do a self audit. Usually I'll ask an owner, how's your training right now? And they'll say, it's not that good, or it could be better. That's usually their biggest problem. But first of all, we want to get training down, okay? Because training is number one. If you want the best employees, then you have to have the best training. You have to provide them with the best training possible. So providing them with subpar training or okay training or decent training is not going to work. You're not going to get the best employees out of that. And then you're going to also be relying on people versus training. You can control your training, you can control your systems, you can't control people. And if you try and hire off of people and rely on that, it's gonna be a really tough road ahead. And I've seen it a million times over and over again. So we want to make sure training's up to par. It's mapped out. I call it franchisable. Not necessarily mean you're going to be a franchise or trying to franchise, but meaning you're going to have consistent training so your employees come out consistently with their knowledge and wherewithal. And then we're going to work on systems to implement all of that training that we just created, and then leadership skills to make sure your leaders are supporting all of that, all the systems and training that we created. And then that automatically will breed really good culture for your restaurant. And then now you're up and running and you're thriving.
Totally. No, I love that. I love that. And my background is a chef, just very briefly, and I've worked in all sorts of restaurants from your QSR fast food restaurants right up to kind of like high end restaurants. And the one thing I always would say to people and always is like when you look at say when you work in like a fast food restaurant, yes, the food obviously is at its level, but what I love most about those places is the systems and the actual processes and how they run. And I think in many ways that system, albeit the actual end product is very different, right? But that the system can still be transferred, and there's so much you can learn from those types of restaurants in the mom and pop and independent stores that just kind of manage, that they tend to just manage without systems and just themselves.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. Um, I'll put you on the spot a little bit, right? But what you've obviously done, let's just say well over 20 restaurant openings, and I'm only basing that off looking at your site, but I'm sure a lot more. If you were to say, if you were to just, and this probably will be very hard because there's so many moving parts to a restaurant, but let's just say one thing that you constantly see or that you saw that is just it's the difference between success and failure in a restaurant. Is that something you pinpoint it down to one
Yeah.
or?
Absolutely. It's training front of the house. That's it. So restaurants open up, they're spending a bunch of money on the aesthetics and a bunch of money on the food menu and the chefs and all that good stuff, which is a good thing. But then they put they have their one of their front of the house managers develop the training. Hey, can you put together the training real quick? We're gonna hire the employees, we'll train them for 7 days, and then we're gonna open our restaurant. And giving your front of the house manager the training module, like putting them in charge of training, is crazy because they're already stretched thin. All restaurant, there's no restaurant managers that are walking around going like, oh, I wish can you give me some more to do? I need more responsibility. They're already stretched very thin. And then you're adding that very crucial piece of the puzzle onto their docket. And so they're just going to try and get it done basically. And so you have this half baked training in 7 days, and then you're opening this restaurant, which you spent so much money on the aesthetics, so much money on time on the menu, and then the front of the house is like not up to par. You know, they don't know the menu that well. They're not good salespeople. They don't know the brand that well. They don't core values, mission statement. They're inconsistent in their delivery of the service, the product, and the hospitality. So everyone's giving different experiences, and then the restaurant's going, why are we not seeing our numbers? Right? We have a bunch of good servers. They all have a good attitude. We have a good menu. We have a good food. We have, our ambiance is great. Why are we not hitting the numbers we want? Why are we missing projections? Well, it's because you're front of the house, the voice, the thing that the people connect the most with your brand is completely mismanaged and off, incoherent, discombobulated, and it's confusing to people. And so that's what they see, and that's the problem. That's the biggest problem by far, without a doubt. Not there's not even anything remotely close to it, because as a chef, you know, I can easily not easily, but I can systematize food, right? I can
Yeah,
get food coming out at a certain time. I can get food. I can start like setting up my food to come out at a certain time during rushes and a certain time during slow times. I can make sure it comes out consistent. I can make sure it gets cooked the same way because it's can become a system. It's just trial and error, and then you can systematize it. Delivering hospitality at a very high level consistently is much more difficult because you're dealing with the customer directly. You're dealing with the guest directly. That
mm,
adds a completely different element, and to be able to set up your training and your staff to be able to adhere to that is very difficult, but it's very possible. But it takes a lot more work and a lot more nuance, and so that's a very difficult piece. Yet they put the least amount of effort into that, and then they wonder why they're getting reviews. They're wondering why they're not getting as much business. They're wondering why their sales aren't where they want them to be. It's because your sales force, you're the face of your business, is that there's no training behind it, there's no culture behind it, there's no management behind it.
deadly. Love it. I mentioned there like all the different restaurants you've diverse restaurants you've worked with. Is there any kind of like obviously you provide a good service and you obviously try to provide a lot of value. Is there anything that stands out, maybe like a success story or a place you've worked with that I suppose something that you've done that has really benefited them?
Yeah, so my whole thing now is, I've worked for corporate restaurants for most of my career, and now I'm helping independent restaurant owners. That's my goal. I want to change their lives. I want to change the way they do business, and I want them to be able to realize their full potential in their businesses by giving them the right tools and training for them and their staff. But I just worked with a restaurant in San Francisco called Chica. Amazing chef. She was I mean, their food's amazing. And so she was having problems with hospitality experience with the front of the house with sales. And so I've been working with her for the last 60 days. Their sales are already up 22%, which is great. That's not my main focus. I know sales will come when you're focused on customer retention, which is front of the house delivery. I know sales will come, but she was telling me with her GM, they're like, wow, when we're hiring now and we're training, it's a completely different game because the servers are coming out so much better trained, and they have such a better attitude, and they're so much easier to manage. But also that whole training process, when we hire someone to train them, it's so systematized that it takes this huge load off our plate, because before we were training people, it was like this daunting task of getting it done, making sure they had this and that set up, and we kind of didn't know what we're doing. But now it's so systematized, it's so easy, and it's changed the game, and it's freed up us to be able to work on the menu, to develop the restaurant, develop systems, grow the business, and focus on stuff like that, rather than focusing on all this training and then upkeep after the training. So that, when I talked to them, it was only a couple of days ago. That's my most recent case study, and I mean, when I hear that, obviously, it's music to my ears.
Deadly. I think you've probably answered this question already, but I have to ask you just because I'm looking at some of the people that are joining here and I know them personally, the restaurant owners around where I'm from. And they're going to be egging me on to ask you this. So, some like I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's tough times economically where we are. I'm sure it's similar to where we are, and it's difficult running a food business, probably more than ever, in recent times. A lot of those people are struggling and just and don't know how to get on. Would you be able to give them some advice?
Sorry, can you say that? Can you repeat that question one more time?
So I have a restaurant. I'm struggling a little bit, and maybe you've answered this already. What can I do? What advice would you give me now to change my fortune a bit?
Okay, so you're a struggling restaurant. I mean, the first thing I would say is, okay, let's talk about like, well, I mean, it depends what you're struggling on, right? Like, what do you what's your
Of course.
struggle? A lot of the restaurant owners I talk to, they're working too much, right? They're working 60 plus hours a week, and that's usually like 60 is a pretty nice number, but they're working a lot and they feel like they're not moving the needle forward. And so the first thing I would say is, okay, first, like I just talked about, let's do a training audit. We need to get your training up to par. Let's get take a huge load off your plate.
Yeah.
Now let's put some systems into place because now I could guarantee you those managers that are struggling, they're working 60 plus hours a week, they're usually running their business by micromanaging. And not because they're micromanagers, but because they're doing it out of default because they don't know how else to get things done. That's just what they've been trained to do since they've opened their restaurant. And they don't know a better way. So let's get those systems in place so we can eliminate micromanaging. We can eliminate you having to run around making sure your staff's doing their job right in order for the restaurant to succeed the way it is succeeding currently, and put those systems in place, and then you manage those systems instead, which makes your job exponentially easier as an owner, manager, leadership, any of those roles. And that's going to right away start peeling back the time that you're spending in your business, and also the headaches, because the proper training also will lower your churn rate, your turnover rate. And now you don't have to hire and fire all the time. You're not constantly hiring, firing, worrying about staffing, all that good stuff, because now you're invoking a good culture and the proper training, so your staff's happy, the morale's up, and then obviously leadership skills to accommodate that. And so with that, you have less time hiring and firing, less time micromanaging. All of a sudden, you're working less hours, less stress, and you're gonna feel the success and a path to move forward versus being stuck in this groundhog's day of just putting out fires day in and day out. And so that would be my first recommendation, and that's a huge step.
Yeah, hallelujah. I love that. That you need to put that on, I don't know, billboard somewhere, electronic billboard. Um, right. Let me finish up on one last one, and then we have loads of questions come in there, so we might get to one or two of them. I'm gonna end on kind of a funny question I like asking people because I'm always kind of thinking about these things. If I gave you £1 million today, Preston, and I said you have to either start a new restaurant business or invest it maybe in an existing one, or how would you spend it?
I think wellness is the way to go. I think that's the future. People are very into wellness right now, and I think this sustainability, and I think that's going to be the new wave. I would invest in something that has retreat aspects to it. So a restaurant that maybe also has a sauna or has a yoga studio, has a cold plunge, a gym attached to it, some sort of hiking trail, maybe a couple of rooms, something like that, but something that's with hydroponics, so you're growing all of your vegetables and garden needs vertically near the restaurant. So it's very true farm to table restaurants versus just those people trying to capitalize on that on that verbiage, and really bring people something that's healthy for them, good for them, and tastes good. And I know as a chef, you could probably appreciate that.
Deadly, love it. Um, we'll just get time for one question. I'm going to kind of paraphrase it. It's a really good question that came in. This person, they're based in Orlando. They basically said that they want to share their figures with their staff so that they kind of have a better idea of the actual realities of running the business. But that when they did it in the past, one of the team members used it against them to get a raise, right? In other words, you're doing X amount, I need more money. But they want to do that because they want to kind of be more transparent with the staff. Is that something that you think that they should do, or how would you approach that?
Yeah, that's from Abstract Orlando, and
Yeah,
this fantastic business owner, very keen on business, and his mindset is amazing. I've watched one of his videos. He's just very excited to know him. But so that's a great question, very common, and yes. So the whole thing about that is setting expectations and pre-emphasizing your culture, right? So when you're hiring on, you got to make sure that you're hiring the right people, and B, we're training them the right way and putting them in the right culture and leading them the right way. And so setting expectations and the right mindset. So that is a common thing that happens, but that's why you set the right culture, the right tone, and hire the right people. So when you do give them the sales to motivate them and to hit projections, their first instinct isn't how do I benefit more from this? How do I extract more money? How do I get more out of the owner versus how do I make the business better? How do I get better at my job? How do I increase those sales and hit those metrics? So that's all part of the hiring and training process. And of course, leadership skills where we can curb that type of behavior and make sure we're putting the right people in the right places to in order to instill those types of metrics.
Deadly. Love it. Preston, I really appreciate your time. As I said, we could talk all day, but we have to wrap it up at some point. So honestly, thanks a million. I'm really looking forward to kind of following your page and the business, and it's great to connect kind of finally, face to face or screen to screen or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you taking the time.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks a million, man. Chat to you soon.
Bye.